Hello and welcome to part 2 of Giombetti Associates. Today we're interviewing Ross and Rick Giombetti, kind of going down the long winding road of how their business developed and how it has evolved. I'd like to start with some questions. We're going to have Ross joining us this time. I guess my first question would be, when did Ross come along? When did he come into the business? Rick?
Well, let me see. Started the business in 84, 86. I don't actually remember the exact date that he came into the business, to be honest with you.
Do you, Ross?
Yeah. I got married in July of 03. I finished out the year at Six Flags. Mohegan Sun. I finished out the year at Mohegan Sun, and then I joined in the early part of 2004.
That sounds right.
Okay, so what was it like when you first joined?
Nervous, excited, a lot of different feelings, but I also think opportunity. You know, for example, we were still using transparencies and overhead projectors when I joined the business.
What are those?
Yeah, right, exactly. That's probably what everybody's thinking.
It was state of the art back then, though.
All of our presentations were on transparency slides where you put them on an overhead projector and it would project up onto a screen where you'd lift the screen. So that's what we were doing for a lot of trainings when I first joined the business. So, excited. I was really passionate about the work. I was excited to do something that I knew that I really loved. And was pretty sure I wanted to do for the rest of my career.
So I'm more interested in, you came from a corporate environment.
Yeah.
You're joining a small business. It's your father's business. And you're both what I would describe as type A personalities. I want to know more about that, not about transparencies. I want to know about the dynamic between the two of you in the beginning.
For a while, I learned a lot from Paul, who we talked about in part 1, who taught me a lot about patience, which I needed to work on. I learned a lot from another colleague of ours, Rich. My dad and I we were aligned on a lot of things.
Okay.
Philosophically, I think that's what made it work so well. Philosophically, we aligned on a lot of things from leadership, relationship building, people, culture, the kind of environment we wanted. So there was a lot that we agreed on. And we weren't afraid to have healthy debate and challenge. Like, we challenge each other. I'm pretty sure he knows I challenged him every step of the way. There was a lot of things I wanted to do differently. But I also wanted to be careful and not try to change too much. Sure. So I think we got along well. We had a ton of fun. But we had our fair share of debate.
Okay. I'd like to get Rick's perspective as well. Was he a good listener in the beginning?
Well, you're talking about Ross being a good listener?
Yes.
Well, everything he said is true, but I never perceived that while we were both type A personalities, I personally never let that get in the way. I knew that he was the heir apparent. And I was thrilled when he called me up the day and from Mohegan Sun and said that he wanted to join the business. And I thought, wow, this is going to be great. I never forced it on him. I didn't expect him to if he didn't want to. But when he called me and said, I'm all in, I got really excited about that. And while we have similar personalities for sure, we're both strong, I kind of thought, you know what, this is a great opportunity for me to transition the business. And while he was reluctant to get involved as he did, I really forced that issue. I took him out to clients. We had projects going on, whether it was leadership training or meetings with owners and CEOs, presidents of organizations. And I forced that issue, and I took him with me because I wanted him to learn as fast as he could. And he was a little hesitant. He was certainly nervous, and certainly in group settings. And I can remember doing a training one time down in Connecticut with a firm. And after we came out of that training, he looked at me and said, Dad, I don't know how you do that. It just flows so smoothly. And I said, Ross, it's just time and place.
Sure.
Once you acquire the language, the knowledge, the insight, you get to know people, you have all the skills to be able to do exactly what I'm doing. As a matter of fact, I was excited about it because I knew that he was better than me. He had the ability, the skill set, the competencies, the intellect, and I was thrilled to know that we'd be moving in some new directions that didn't scare me at all.
He pushed me. He pushed me to train and develop. He pushed me to, get into a role where I was using platform skills more. But I was hesitant early on in that journey because I didn't want to be perceived as too young of a guy or a person who was trying to teach or coach people that were 20, 30, 40 years my senior, who knew a lot more about leadership and business and culture than I did. So I was hesitant.
So how long was it before the training wheels came off in your mind, where you felt comfortable, you felt like you knew what you were talking, you felt ready?
I joined the business, so I was probably 27-ish when I joined the business. And I bet it wasn't until I was probably 32. I bet it was probably a solid 5 years where I got to a point where I felt better about my ability to share thoughts, share ideas, share wisdom with people that were much smarter than I was, had more experience than I did.
I would have never guessed it was that long.
I bet it was close to 5 years where I felt confident that I could be in that space and not be phony, not be a fraud, be trusted, be listened to. I bet it took me 5 years to get to that point.
And I think what really helped him do that was that our performance dynamic system, which is a behaviorally based system, it takes a long time to learn the nuance of the interaction of personality. The components that drove performance dynamics, he wasn't really comfortable with, even though he had been through the process himself many times over the years. Even when he came back into the business, when he called me from Mohegan Sun that day, and I said, yeah, that's great, but I'm going to reassess you, put you through our behavioral performance dynamics program again to see what's going on with you. So he was kind of uncomfortable with that because he didn't have the in-depth experience of interacting with executives and applying the behavioral nuance to those personality components and concepts. Once he did, boy, not only did he hit the ground running, after that, and I'm not sure it was 5 years, but it was a while, whether it was 3 or 4 or 5 years, once he began to gain the insight of how to combine the concepts of personality, apply it to behavior, and really help those executives along, he hit the ground running.
So what a gift to work with family every day and each and every day, right? How was that?
You know, for me, it's beyond a gift. Like I said, I never forced Ross into that. And I was thrilled that he wanted to do so. And so working with him every day, he mentioned a key component of it. I think any business or family dynamics is having fun. And Ross and I both have the same kind of personality that the fun side of business for me was always paramount to make it enjoyable. So we loved coming into work every day. And I can remember most days, yeah. And his office sat right across from mine. There was a door, so we could see each other. And in my desk, we used to play tricks on each other and make the day as funny as we could. I used to have this rubber fish in my desk.
It looked like a giant barracuda.
It looked like a giant barracuda, right?
Or a
so
pike.
If he was having a bad day, if he was down and I could tell, I would go into my desk and he couldn't see me. I'd sneak around the corner and I'd come up to the door jamb where he could just see my arm come out with the fish on it. And I would talk to him and say, hey, what's wrong with you two? You having a bad day today? Come on, wake up over there. And so we knew how to have fun together. And so back to your question of having family, for me it was a blessing.
So you guys both project very well. Was there a good soundproofing in the wall between your offices?
In between our offices, we had a solid, very heavy door.
Yeah.
But the rest of the walls were pretty thin.
So it's a unique similarity. What are some of the other similarities that you have?
Well, being both type A personalities, we want to be in charge and control. We're both creative types, so we have lots of ideas. We're high energy. We're always on the go. But I think for me, understanding who Ross was and what he wanted to do with the business never scared me. Like perhaps a lot of owners and entrepreneurs and executives that wouldn't let go, I never had a problem with that.
After we got through some tough conversations.
Yeah. So what do you think some of your similarities are?
He mentioned, so I think both of us use intuition and gut a lot in what we do, decisions we make, how we interact with a person. I think we're both able to read a person or a room or a culture pretty fast, and use that intuition and instinct to help guide us.
So you guys are both emotional guys as well.
No question. Both he and I are sensitive, emotional types, not afraid to show emotion, both affectionate, both huggers. We both love being around people, so we have far more similarities than we do differences.
Well, great segue. What do you think your differences are? Now take a moment. I mean, batter up if you're ready, but really think long and deep about this and tell me what your differences are.
I'm thinking.
I got two. One is more of a weakness or an area of development of mine, something I don't do well that he did really well. He understood structure and process and planning way better than I did. I wing it. I figure it out as I go a lot more often. He uses intuition too. He doesn't have a problem winging it and figuring out as he goes, but he likes having a plan, and I don't need one. Quite honestly, I probably don't really like one, but I know I need one. So that's probably one major difference. I'm a much bigger risk taker than he is. He was a lot more careful and calculated in the risks that we would take with the business. And I don't. He was more comfortable using, and this is probably the one that caused us one of the most frictions or challenges between our style. He would pretty often say things like, I'm the owner of the business and I'm gonna make the executive decision. That was a phrase that he used often. I don't use that phrase. We have a different style. He was more authoritative when he needed to be, and I did not respond well to that style. That was probably the biggest friction point that he and I had. When he would use that, I would turn off.
He'd shut down.
Shut down.
That would really tick him off. But I think I learned when I was in business, and one of my first jobs that I had in industry, I worked for a very, very tough general manager. And he taught me a lot. And one of the concepts that he taught me was, and a lot of people don't understand this, the phrase was that management is not a democracy. And I didn't understand that at the time. But he was really right on the money. And what he inferred and meant by that is that there had to be tough decisions that were made at the executive level. And I never shied away from that or had a problem with it. But the authoritative part, Ross, was accurate. I don't think I would flaunt it. But when those opportunities came for me to make those executive decisions, I made them regardless of what other people thought. That really ticked him off for sure. Some people might say either it was a lack of collaborative effort or participative effort. But I can also say pretty confidently that people that worked in our organization, I was inclusive. I would listen. Doesn't mean I was going to go along with you. And it doesn't mean that I thought you were right. It just meant that I was listening to you. And I would say that. I'm listening to you. Doesn't mean I'm going to agree. Mm-hmm. And as the owner of the business, when I didn't agree, I told you.
So in our first part of our interview, I got the sense that you are a risk taker through the way you started your business. But once that business matured, you protected it. And I would suggest that that may be the difference. So if you could pull back time and it was Rick Giombetti starting Giombetti, I'm not so sure you'd be very different than Ross.
This is insightful, good commentary. And as I think about what you just said, I think the difference in entrepreneurship between Ross and I is that when you start a business, the risks are immense. And when people tell you that it's easy to start, develop, grow a business, and to be successful, they don't understand what they're talking about. We're talking about anxiety at night and worrying about where the next paycheck's coming from. How are you going to pay the bills? As an individual entrepreneur, that Ross didn't have that insight when I started the business is I wore every hat: accounting, sales, doing the work, out there in the road, making sales calls, whatever, marketing, et cetera, et cetera. It was stressful as hell. And then anyone that would tell you differently would be kidding you.
Sure.
So the difference for sure for me was, back to the word you used, protecting the business. I'm not sure I was protecting it, but I worked hard to get to the hell where I was, profitability and success. And I didn't want to do anything that would damage that in terms of all the hard work that I and others in the organization, other associates at Giombetti, especially a gentleman by the name of Paul Alls, it really was he wasn't a partner of the business. I treated Paul like a partner. And I was afraid not necessarily to go outside the box, because I'm a very creative guy and I am a risk taker. But I was safe about direction and plan as how whatever decisions I was making might impact the business. And I think one of the key differences was that insight that I gained from starting the business from scratch.
Okay. So what were some of the best experiences of working together? Try and think of one each.
Oh, I can think of many. I'm going to let Ross go first because I'm going to save mine because it's a beauty.
Well, we might come up with the same one.
Oh, okay.
I think this was probably a great experience for the two of us, but also probably a defining moment. What I would call a defining moment for my career, knowing that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So I remember it's early in my career with Giombetti Associates. It's within the first 5 years, and he and I go up to a part of New York. I'll leave the name of the company out, but we go up to a part of New York, and we're engaging a senior leadership team, and I think there was 13 people on the senior leadership team that we were going to be doing some team building with over the course of the next couple of days, and we had never met any of them. It's a brand new team. And we get up there one evening, and they invite us over to their facility to meet the team. And they bring us into an office in the building, and nobody's talking. We're shaking hands, we're saying hi, and nobody's talking, nobody's saying anything. And I'm thinking, what the heck is going on here? Knew something was up. The leader of that team hands out slips of paper, 13 slips of paper, with the name of a person on each one. And she says, here, if you guys are so good, you should be able to tell us who we all are. And we only had their personality profile, their assessment results. And so I'm young at that point, and I got him by my side, seasoned pro, and I'm thinking, what in the hell did we just get ourselves into? And we told them, okay, we only have one rule, we only have one request. You can't lie when we ask you questions. And so she hands them out, and before we start asking questions, one guy on the team, I remember he says, good luck.
Knew who he was right away, didn't
Knew who he was right away. Looked at the profile, grabbed his name, and I said, here you go, asshole. And what we did is we handed them all out. The leader said, hand them all out, and then if you got us right, we'll sit down and we'll see how you did. Wow.
Wow, what a test.
Wow. So we pass them all out, asking questions about behavior and personality. Pass them all out, and we look at each other. You good? Yep. Okay, I'm good.
We talked throughout the entire period in terms of personality. We bounced questions off of each other. We conferred. We collaborated together in terms of sorting out who these people were. It was absolutely fascinating. I was dumbfounded myself. And to be honest with you, Ross did most of the sorting out. I was amazed in watching him.
Okay, I got to know, what was your batting average?
So we handed them all out, and the leader...
They were standing up. They were all standing up.
Standing up in the room, and the leader said, okay, if they got you right, sit down. And all 13 sat down.
Wow.
And that was amazing.
We celebrated that night with a hell of a steak dinner and a bottle of wine, and it was...
And who we celebrated with, though, he didn't share this with you. We went out to a restaurant that evening with their director of human resources that sat in the whole thing. He was dumbfounded. And over dinner, we had conversation regarding what Ross just told you. That was just unbelievable.
That was probably the most terrifying experience of my career, maybe. But also most rewarding, gratifying, and a defining moment, saying, letting me know in my psyche, okay,
I can do this.
I can do this.
And not only
I think it was then that I started to gain more confidence and comfort with my ability to read people and read situations, and
Great
that
story.
that was very rewarding.
Great story.
No, it was just
What's yours?
unbelievable. Yeah. Well, that one popped into mind for sure, but another one that popped into my mind happened later on in our careers and later on in the business. I was probably transitioning out, and we were extremely busy with lots of clients and things to do. And Ross was scheduled to go to a client and conduct a leadership training program with the president and his senior staff. And I remember there might have been 10 or 12 people in that senior staff. And all of a sudden, something came up. And I hadn't been involved with this company at all. I didn't really know a lot about the owner, the CEO. I didn't know a lot about the senior leadership team. And all of a sudden, Ross couldn't make it. So he came to me and said, hey, Dad, you got to fill in on this project for me. And I said, oh, my God. Not that it scared me, but I had no idea of who they were, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm leading towards the relationship that we have and trust in each other. I was on my way out, getting ready to retire. And I said, okay, fill me in, share some insight about the people, the team, the leader, and I went. And I knew at that time that we had mutual respect and trust in each other. And when I got there, I determined pretty quickly that Ross had developed this unbelievable relationship with the owner. And he was really disappointed that I was there. I could tell. And we talked about it. But it was a 2-day interaction, I think. And while it was uncomfortable for the first half day, by the end of the 2 days, we as a team, this owner and his senior leadership team really came together. And I had stepped into a role that I was unprepared for. I knew I could handle it, but I knew then that the defining moment for me was Ross had trusted me to do that, and I had always trusted him. After the story he told you, I knew that Giombetti Associates in the future of the company was in great hands, and I didn't have to be there anymore. So the defining moment for me was emotional, that he trusted his dad enough that was on his way out to pasture that he said, no, I need you back in here. And that was a great feeling for me.
Okay, so let's talk more about the transition. Was it a long transition? Did it happen quickly? Was there anything defining about the transition that we should know?
It was long.
It was
long. Yeah, it was long.
Yeah.
It was the transition of figuring that out was the most difficult part of my career and life to this point. He was struggling to let go. I knew he trusted me. I knew he believed in my ability, but he's still the founder. And every single person I talked to said the same thing, that the way they put it was, for a founder of a business, it's like Velcro. Getting them to separate from it is hard. And I understood that. I was patient with it. The conversations unfolded over the course of probably 3 to 5 years. You know, the advice I would give to other people going through this is have a plan sooner. We didn't really have a plan. There was no succession strategy or plan. It was like, I know you're ready, you know I'm ready, where do we go from here?
So I'm surprised because I know Rick loves to vacation.
He does.
I would have thought that it would have happened quicker, Rick.
You know, I think at one point, everything Ross said is true. It wasn't, and I don't think it was that I was afraid to let go. I was certainly enjoying life. The business, we're fortunate. Anybody that works at Giombetti Associates truly should understand that you've died and gone to heaven. It's not normal corporate America. It's not a normal job. You have total freedom, whatever that takes to run a business. Now, I really understood that. So a defining moment for me was I always practiced what I preached about. Life is really short, and you should enjoy it and have fun. And at one point, it just clicked for me that he may not have known at the time, but psychologically inside for me, I said, I'm out of here. This is great. I can't wait. Are you shitting me? I was jumping up and down inside in joy because I knew that it was going to be in great hands.
Good.
So for me, it was a blessing, not in disguise, but it was a blessing that he was so damn talented that I realized that.
Right.
I think the hardest part was probably two things about the transition. He let me make a lot of decisions. He let me run the business. You know, there was probably a period of 3 or 4 years where he wasn't in the office much. He was kind of semi-retired, but we hadn't finalized the transition of the ownership of the business. And for a while, you know, for those probably 2 or 3 years, he kind of let me run the business. So that went great. That went seamlessly. He would come back, you know, he would come back in. And when he came back in, you know, because he was still the owner of the business, he felt the need to, you know, enforce his will, and he would be a bit of a tornado at times. And we worked through that. That wasn't the hardest part. I think the hardest part was the actual transition of ownership. That was the hardest part. And I remember it was emotional for me. I struggled with it a lot. You know, my wife will tell you there were many nights I was home emotional, not knowing. You know, he was ready to let go of running the business and let me run it, but the ownership transition was the hardest piece. And so I talked to 3 or 4 other people who had been through the same transition, and I asked them advice. I asked them a lot of questions, and they said all the same thing, that you're probably going to need to force it. And so I went to him at one point in time in the period of those 3 to 5 years, and I said, look, I want this business. I really want it. I love what we do. I think I can do pretty good things with it. This doesn't work for me anymore. I want to buy out. I want to buy the business. And I think that was probably also a defining moment for both of us, where he knew I was serious. He knew I was taking full responsibility. He knew I wanted it. He knew this is what I really wanted to do. I don't know how he felt about that, but I know when I had that conversation, and after he and I started talking about it, everything changed.
Did it feel
seriously? Everything changed.
You know, I remember that conversation well, just as he defined it.
Did it feel adversarial?
Not for me. I don't know how he was feeling. But what I do remember about the whole transition, back to your question about transition, was this. I remember the day that we were going to meet in the lawyer's office to sign papers. And Andy and I had gotten dressed up, and Ross and his wife Liz were already there at the attorney's office downtown Springfield. And I can remember walking into that lawyer's office. And, I don't know what my feelings were in retrospect as I'm thinking about it. But I also knew that there was a weight that was lifted off my shoulder that I didn't have to run this business anymore. I didn't have to carry it on my shoulders. And I was really relieved. The only thing was the negotiation in terms of the financial picture of what we negotiated in terms of a buyout. But I remember after that was all through and said, and we signed the papers and we shook hands, that attorney looked at us and said, I don't think I've ever handled a family transition that has gone as smooth as this has, and you too. And I'm getting a little emotional. It was the respect that I had for him. And I knew that the business was in great hands. And whether he realized it or not, I was glad to get the hell out and enjoy life. So it worked out great.
Good. Yeah, that's nice. All the frustration, all the aggravation, all the pain, all the things that I had been feeling for that period of time, gone. Minute we worked through that, and the advice I got from those four individuals I talked to was unbelievably helpful. Those of you who, may be watching or listening to this, you know who you are, and that helped me a tremendous amount, and it helped us get past that point, because everything before that and everything since then, he and I are best friends. We have a ton of fun together. We do a lot together. We have much more similarities than we do differences. But after we got through that, Kenny, everything was gone.
A lot of family businesses struggle, and we know that because we consulted to it for a living. We consulted to lots of family businesses and saw relationships go down the tubes, and fathers and sons, or daughters and fathers or mothers, or whatever the relationships were, siblings. We saw lives and businesses destroyed because of their inability to get along. That's not Ross and I.
So you only entered that once in your life. It's no man's land. So you have to have clarity in your head on how that evolves and how it moves forward. And that may be different for one person than another. So that's a great story. Thank you very much. So let's transition. Let's talk about the business today. What's stayed the same? What's changed? Ross, tell us a little about the business today. What's new?
I would say a lot of things are new, and philosophically, nothing's changed. What we represent, what we stand for, what we're about, the core of who we are and the work we do, nothing's changed. It's about building high-performance teams. It's about building awesome cultures where people get up in the morning and they're excited to go to work there. It's about coaching and developing a person to become a better version of themselves, and watching that growth. That is high. I get high on that. So, and so does he. There's nothing that's changed there. A lot of the old school training materials gone. Matter of fact, there's been some funny little things that we've done with our team. There's a couple of things that were pet projects of Rick and Paul's, materials that they like to use, and we just our team looked at them pretty consistently, and then got to a point after we felt like we had cleared the time where he had been out of the business long enough where we could destroy him. I remember a couple of things we burned, and we took a video and burned it. We took a video of burning different training materials and sent it to him like, this piece of shit's finally out of here. So we did a lot of that. We grew the business quite a bit over a number of years in just adding relationships. Mm-hmm. And for me, it didn't work. It doesn't really align well with what I really want to do and where I feel we can add the most value. So probably 3 or 4 years ago, my team might validate the timing on that, but probably 3 or 4 years ago, I had what you would call a Jerry Maguire moment. Fewer relationships, more time with them. And so we're much more selective about the types of work we take on in relationships. I've had a number of conversations with existing clients we've done business with, and supported on and off over the years, but never felt like it was a partnership. And so I approached a number of those relationships and just had that conversation with them and said, look, if that's not what you want, that's okay. We'll still maintain a relationship. We'll still be friends. But this doesn't work for our business anymore, and this is where we're headed. I'd like you to be part of it, but if you don't want to be, that's okay, and I'll respect it. And thankfully, most of those relationships embraced it, and so we work a lot more on retainer relationships where we get to spend more time working as a partner to certain businesses, and that's been great. We spend a lot more time in areas of a business like onboarding, which is so critical to keeping your good people, but a lot of organizations don't get that right.
Sure.
So we spend a lot of time in onboarding. There's new things we do, but the foundation of how we do it hasn't changed, which is personality and behavior and culture.
A couple of things that I taught Ross over the years, and he taught me lots. I think the foundation that I gave him regarding the business was the core of Giombetti Associates and its success was built on the platform of performance dynamics. And I told him to never lose that platform and to use it continuously to do whatever he's going to do. But when I look back at my career in business, for me, it was never about business and money. Truly, for me, it was about people. So one of the things I taught Ross is that the behavioral instrument that you use affects people's lives dramatically, exponentially. You change people's lives through the forum and platform of performance dynamics to take it seriously. And it wasn't about making money for businesses. That didn't turn me on. What turned me on was people, making them better, developing world-class leaders. And I'm going to take a moment to share this story because this is what it's all about. It's not about the business. It's about what Ross has referred, relationships, and he does it much better than me, 10 times better than me. Wow. But what I learned was this story. I remember a CEO calling me up one day, and I may have mentioned this in part one. I don't recall, but it's worth mentioning again if I did. The CEO said, "Can you interact with my wife?" I said, "Sure, what's up, man?" He says, "If I can't move her in some new directions, I'm going to leave her." They were married with 3 kids. They were probably in their mid-40s, and he was very unhappy. He was emotional, sensitive, caring, very successful. His wife was more interested. She was an only child, spoiled like hell, was more concerned about the 3-car garage and the Beamers and the swimming pool in the backyard than she was of her husband and kids. And he said to me, "I've been married for X number of years, and I can't count on one hand the times that she's told me that she's ever loved me." Now, in our platform, love is driven by empathy and feelings and emotion. And one of the traits we measure is called goodwill. It has to do with everything I'm talking about. And that goodwill, his score was really high and hers was very low. She was self-centered because she was spoiled as an only child. The story has a happy ending. And where I'm going with it is that I, in this case, changed their lives. I had her in feedback. She came in. She went through performance dynamics. And I have always been honest with people, and sometimes in a nice way or a direct way that sometimes makes people feel uncomfortable. And I told her all that she was self-centered. And she began to cry. And I said to her, "Do you want to stay married? Are you in love with your husband?" She said, "Absolutely, yes." I said, "If you don't change your behavior, he's going to leave you." And she began to cry again. And I gave her a big hug. And the ending to that story is they're still together this day, happy as hell, because she moved in new directions. So what's my message and point? For me, it wasn't about business. It wasn't about profitability. It wasn't about bottom line. Those things never motivated me. What motivated me was people and relationships and making them better. Ross does that much better than me. He's unbelievably intuitive. He cares about people deeply. And that's why I felt blessed that the transitioning of the business to him was in good hands, because also it's not all about the money with Ross. It's about relationships and family and people. That's what I'm most proud of him of.
Good time for a hug.
Yeah. Yeah. He's one of a kind. They don't make too many like Ross Giombetti. And all the people that know him and have the opportunity to interact with him are fortunate and blessed that he's in their life as he is in mine.
Nice.
I had a great teacher. I had a great mentor. He was a sidebar. I know you didn't ask the question, but one of the things that I know both my sister and I appreciated most about him was how real he was with both of us when we were really young. How honest he was, how open he was. He was transparent, he was affectionate, he was tough on us, but when we were in high school, he would say things to us like, look, I know you're going to go out and have fun. I know you're going to go to parties. I know you're going to, have drinks. The minute you make a bad decision to get behind the wheel of a car, you're all done. You're going to lose my trust. You call me if you're in those situations. No questions asked. I'll come get you. I'll come pick you up. I'll come get you and your friends. I'll bring you home. No questions asked. He did it. He did it. I called on that twice. He gave great advice, life advice. So, in addition to having fun working together, I'm fortunate that he was a great father. He was a great father. My coach, my fan. I wouldn't be where I am without the love and support and encouragement of my wife and family and my parents and what they taught me.
Nice.
I don't forget that.
Okay, final question. Let's pull the future into the present. It's probably not a fair question. Who are the next family members coming into the business?
Oh, shit, I don't know.
We had some conversation about that within the last few hours, actually.
I don't know.
Maybe it's not a good one to answer. Keep the door wide open.
The door is wide open. I don't know. I am very excited for what we're doing in the business. I'm very fortunate to have a team that loves and supports me every step of the way. They know that this year's been very difficult emotionally for a lot of people, but also for me being a relationship builder and a hugger, not being able to be with so many of our clients that I call friend, not being able to see a lot of humans. I'm very fortunate that I've got an unbelievable team to work with every day. And we have a lot of exciting stuff going on. We got a lot to do. A lot to be thankful for and a lot to do. Got a lot on our plate. And we're looking for our next member of our team right now. As far as my kids, I want like he said it earlier and he's right. It was never pressure to come into the business. It was never obligation. I never felt any of that. And I'm sure there's plenty of family businesses that did. I didn't. He's 100% true on that. I never felt obligated or pressure to come into the family business because it was an option. Yeah, it was an option, but I wanted to make sure it was right for me. Same with my kids. My oldest daughter, Noelle, is a pretty unique individual. She's intuitive. She has great emotional intelligence at her age. She's thoughtful. She's driven. But I'm not sure if this business is something that she's going to want. I don't know.
Well, you should probably go down the line, talk about each one of them.
Yeah. Next is my son, Ryan. Ryan, my 13-year-old, he's probably the most like me in a lot of ways. He's going to be a late bloomer. He's sensitive. He's emotional. He's creative and intuitive. You know, he wants to do a lot of different things. And then my youngest daughter, Lainey, I would not rule her out. She is the one who will tell you how it is. She doesn't have much of a filter. She's a handful of personality. She makes you laugh every step of the way. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if it was any one of the three of them. Who knows?
All right.
The door is wide open. I don't know.
Well, listen, guys, I want to thank you very much for sharing your intimate stories. It was very interesting. I enjoyed it very, very much. And I hope all you folks enjoy it as well. Thank you.
Hey there, Daisy, with the sunlight smile. Shine your loving on me a while longer, until the clouds are gone. Well, I see a spark in your deep blue eyes. Follow that star, it'll steer you right always, and it'll guide you home. And oh, do you find your way? I'm gonna hold your place, and I will keep you safe. Hey little man, how quick you grow, from an acorn to a mighty oak. I know I gotta let you go. Watched you rolling through the autumn leaves. Now you're standing on your own 2 feet. I hope you keep me close, 'cause oh,